Just a few weeks shy of my 20th birthday, I was diagnosed with end-stage cancer, and it would later be officially diagnosed as end-stage ovarian cancer. I didn't expect to live. They didn't expect me to live. They couldn't give me any treatments, but I went into a deep, long fast. In fact, I didn't eat anything for 3 months. But instead, what happened was something really remarkable. Long fasts for patients with cancers and with particular bulky tumor loads like I had would shrink the tumor. Cancer is not a genetic disease, despite us still treating it as such. Today alone, in the United States, 1,700 people are going to die of cancer.
Wow.
Just on your podcast. And I don't mean to be rude, but how can you poison the body back into health?
Hi, Dr. Nasha. Welcome to the Female Blueprint podcast. We are so excited to have you here today.
So fun. And it's fun. I've been cyber stalking you, so I'm looking forward to being with you and all of your listeners. So thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so excited. Just right before we started recording, I was just saying, I'm like, I just am so excited to learn from you today and kind of just gather what your story is, where you came from, and honestly, the work that you're doing now. Like, obviously, I'm very holistic in the pelvic health world, and you're holistic in the conventional medicine, like treating cancer. Like, that is so insane. I just can't wait to dive in today. So I followed your work, and what I love the most is how open you are. You're honest, you're vulnerable and about everything, which is like really good in the medicine space because we don't get to see that a whole lot. But before we get into all that, can you share what like personally pulled you into this world of treatment and medicine?
Yes, absolutely. Well, again, you and I are kind of in taboo industries, right? No one really wants to talk about the pelvic floor, but certainly at dinner parties, nobody wants to talk about cancer. And yet it's something I'm incredibly passionate about. And probably maybe like you or your listeners, I didn't get into the oncology space thinking this seems like a really good career choice. It was definitely one born out of my own experience, my own sort of, pain to purpose journey. And so I don't even know, honestly, if I understood or knew or had an experience of what health was prior to my cancer diagnosis. And so up until the age of 19, I mean, my mom tells me stories about me kicking the ashtray off her belly when she was pregnant with me. I am told stories about the first 6 months of my life. They couldn't figure out what to feed me because no way were they giving me a breast in 1971. So they tried every which way of formulas and settled on the best of the worst, which was a soy formula. No one questioned that. No one questioned the fact that I was super malnourished and sick and was put on basically baby Prilosec as a toddler to deal with my extreme drum belly of gas and discomfort. That was just normalized.
Yeah.
Doctors told my mom that me pooping once a month as a baby and as a toddler was just normal for me because that was just my pattern. Clearly not. Everything I was experiencing was normalized, including starting my period when I was 9. Including being put on birth controls by the time I was 11 to deal with extreme pain of endometriosis, officially diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome by the time I was 14, 2 rounds of cervical dysplasia by the time I was 16, junior rheumatoid arthritis, multiple tendon injuries from, I was a volleyball player, so easily injured and difficult to repair. IBS diagnosis, thyroid issues. I was a hot mess, but no one thought anything of it, including myself, because there was a pill for that, right? There was a pill for that ill. And so by the time I was 19, I was a sophomore in college. That summer before my sophomore year in college, I was having more intensified symptoms and I kept showing up in the emergency room asking for help. But instead I was treated like a histrionic drug seeking female. And I kept explaining to them, the anxiety drugs don't help. They make me more anxious. The antibiotics make me sick. The antifungals you give me for the yeast infections that those antibiotics cause me more sickness. Like I was in a hamster wheel, right? And basically they kept telling me it was just worsening of all my symptoms. So fast forward, my roommate found me unconscious at home and rushed me to the emergency room where I had a different doctor that night who took one look at me and realized what I was dealing with was not more endometriosis or more irritable bowel syndrome. It was, in fact, after a deeper dive, a physical exam, imaging and a biopsy that would take a few weeks to get the final results. But for them to know that night, just a few weeks shy of my 20th birthday, I was diagnosed with end stage cancer, and it would later be officially diagnosed as end stage ovarian cancer, which was a zebra of its time. A 19-year-old in 1991 with that type of diagnosis was unheard of. Unfortunately, today it's more and more on the rise, and we can talk about that in a moment. But I didn't expect to live. They didn't expect me to live. They couldn't give me any treatments because I had 100% bowel blockage. My liver was in failure. My kidneys were in failure. My tumor, grapefruit-sized tumor on my ovary, was cutting off my kidney function. I had masses throughout my liver, throughout my whole abdomen, big blockage in my gut that nothing was going up or down. I was a mess. And I was told I had less than 3 months to live. As a doctor now, looking back, I recognize it was probably less than that. And so my expectation was not to live it, to fight it, to kill it. I wanted to understand it. I wanted to understand why I suddenly realized I'd never been healthy and that it had been all normalized, and that I really wanted to understand this on my way out. And so here we are over 34 years later at the time of this conversation. And I'm still learning about that for myself, but also for tens of thousands of patients that I've had direct contact with and support of their process, as well as hundreds of thousands indirectly through the clinicians that I now train around the globe.
That is an insane, incredible, inspiring story.
Oh, thanks, Courtney.
Wow.
Yeah.
19 years old and just like compounding illness after illness after illness, just searching for answers. Well, I mean, as a 19-year-old too, like you don't know what you don't know. Like you don't know what questions to ask. You trust the providers around you. You trust your family members who are your health advocates at the time. And wow. So 19, you were just basically unconscious, but leading up to this, these masses were growing.
Yeah.
You
and
never had any imaging, MRIs, pap smears, nothing.
No, because they knew my medical history. So they assumed. They made an ass out of you and me, the old saying goes. And they assumed that it was just endometriosis, that it was just polycystic ovarian syndrome, that it was just IBS. So all of my symptoms could be explained by previous diagnoses from years before. But they neglected to see me. They neglected to hear me, listen to me, and understand when I said, things are different. There's something wrong. Something isn't normal. Please listen. They didn't. And by the time someone did listen, someone did pay attention, someone did ask different questions and look at things from a different perspective, it was too late. And I am very fortunate today that my accidental experiences that would unfold in the days, weeks, and months to follow is why you and I can even have this conversation today. It was not thanks to the medical system that saved my life. It was thanks to my own inner curiosity and my own inner, exploration and my own inner warrior that figured this out and is continuing to figure out for myself and many others.
And I'm so glad your story is now the catapult for everybody else. I have not a similar story, but like a story that also is the reason for why I would do what I do. And that's what makes our work so powerful, is because we've lived it, we've been through it, we know what it's like, and now you're able to actually help it. Yeah. So what was day one like after the diagnosis? The next day, like what were the steps to healing your body for, a 3-month?
Yeah. Firstly, they could not get me out of there fast enough. They did not know what to do with me. I was uninsured as well, so I couldn't take up valuable real estate in the hospital setting. They made me comfortable and basically sent me to what was, we didn't really have in that time where I lived, hospice, but they sent me to what would be basically palliative care. They also gave me the name of somebody who would give me a second opinion, who I had a meeting with just a few days later, who had a similar opinion. The thing they did do for me in the hospital, I also had a belly full of fluid known as ascites, which is a malignant buildup of fluid outside of where fluid should be. And that took a lot of pressure off, and that helped me be a little bit more comfortable. They also offered me pain meds, but I'd taken pain meds before to know that they backfired in my body. So I sort of bootstrapped through it, pulled up my bootstraps to get through it. The best accidental thing that happened during that time, though, is because of the bowel blockage, I couldn't eat anything without getting violently nauseous, severe pain, and throwing up, which then added to the severe pain. And so we would not know this, by the way, for another almost 30 years. But I went into a deep, deep, long fast. In fact, I didn't eat anything for 3 months, or for over 2 months of solid foods. I had little, I was able to manage little tiny sips of water in the beginning, and then little tiny sips of herbal teas. And then over time, I was able to get into some little tiny sips of broths, like vegetable bouillon broths. That's about all I could manage for over 2 months. And you would think, for how malnourished I was, depleted I was, that I would starve to death. But instead, what happened was something really remarkable. And we now understand this in the literature of what was happening. In fact, there was literature from 1909, by the way, a Dr. Moreschi, Moreschi, who showed that long fasts for patients with cancers and with particular bulky tumor loads like I had would shrink the tumor. And so that's what I didn't know at the time. It would take me another 20 some years before I learned that information. But that's precisely what happened. What happened is I was still having to go get drained a couple times a week in the beginning to get the ascites down. But that started coming back slower and slower. And I managed to go longer and longer distances between the drainage. It would take about 2 months before it stopped coming back in. But during that time, I was fasting, which also meant, in standard of care today, if you have a bowel blockage, the number one treatment is bowel rest, which means nothing by mouth. So I was accidentally doing that as well. No one made this recommendation at the hospital, by the way, or the ER, by the way. I just defaulted to that on my own out of just necessity. But over time, the discomfort, I could handle larger amounts of liquid. I could start to then move to more pureed liquids, and foods, and then slowly but surely bring things on that did not backfire, if you will. So that also changed things for me. And another piece that happened is, you kind of alluded to this in the beginning about like family and community and having your support systems. Actually, I didn't. I was very much on my own. I graduated high school, and a week later I moved away to another state for college. Part of that was just a desire to move to the mountains of Colorado, but it was also to get out of a very traumatic childhood and life that was, I wanted a new start. And at that time, this was a time no one could find you on social media. There wasn't social media. I actually did a family fast during this time because I didn't need or want my family of origin to know what was going on, because I didn't want that dynamic. There was a lot of stuff in my family of origin that people would have made it about themselves. And I didn't have the bandwidth to deal with that, to be quite blunt.
Boundary.
And so, so I was like, this is easier on my own. And so that helped. And I had a very, very tight network of just 2 or 3 friends, and a very well-meaning professor, and a great medical, a doctor who was willing to do my imaging and my lab tests for me. And that's it for that whole period of time. But slowly over time, I started to stabilize, and no one still knew what to do with me. So when I kind of come back saying, I'm still here, now what? They did not know what to do. They had nothing to offer, and basically stopped taking my calls and my requests. And so that's how this journey started, was sort of being thrown out into the wilderness to my own devices, not expected to live, not expecting to live. And those accidents of the fasting, and the fasting from family as well. You talked about that first 24 hours or so. After my follow-up visit with a second opinion, I ended up at my public library. I'm pre-med, by the way. I'm very scientifically minded. That's how my brain works. Nothing in my world was about alternative medicine. Didn't even know that existed. And I happened down an aisle of books, and this book just, I feel like, jumped out at me. Of this unknown person of the time. This is 1991, by the way, fall of 1991. And this book, I sat down on the floor and I devoured it in 2 hours. I'm a really rapid reader, so that's not actually a big deal, but I just devoured it, and it changed everything. And the book was by an unknown author by the name of Deepak Chopra, called Quantum Healing.
Wow.
And it literally, I had my quantum paradigm shift sitting on the floor in that sunbeam on a fall day in Durango, Colorado in 1991, and could never look back again. And so between that and a few other beautiful happenstance moments, I feel like I was very divinely supported and led on this, and more so being pushed inward. I didn't have a lot of the outside well-meaning advice. So I had to really go inside. And
Yeah.
that's what probably saved my life.
Oh my gosh, that is so inspiring. That is, I bet also the journey itself was very hard, isolating, lonely, a lot of fear, a lot of confusion. So, how did you handle that side of things? Because that comes with the diagnosis of cancer. And I'm sure a lot of the women and men that you work with in general, like they're struggling that at the same time because they want the healing. So, how did you navigate that? And then, how do you also help people now navigate that?
So another weird piece about me that it may be uncomfortable to hear this. It may be a trigger warning for your listeners.
Hmm.
But leading up to that moment, because of the amount of trauma and poverty and abuse and the things I'd experienced, I'd actually tried to take my own life on more than one occasion
Hmm.
in the years leading up to that diagnosis. So I will tell you, at the very moment that the diagnosis landed, there was a moment of relief.
Mm.
There was an absolute like, well, this is far sexier to go this way than to do it myself. There was
Hmm.
this moment of, it almost felt like a martyrship, if that makes sense. Like, oh, what a very heroic way to go. There was like just a flash of that. But what was also really interesting is once they were so the medical providers were so dismissive about the whole process that it was too painful. In fact, the man who came in and told me had a daughter my age, and he cried in telling me this news, and I comforted him. So that should give you a clue.
Mm.
But it was like
Mm.
they did not know how to handle this situation. They were not trained to know how to meet somebody in this space. It's just not the case. And there's very few doctors today who could meet someone in this space as
Yeah.
well. So just in fairness, it wasn't just on
Right.
them. But when he basically said, there's nothing we can do, there's nothing that can be done, there's nothing that you can do. I didn't even know to even ask about alternatives or diet
Right.
or lifestyle. I didn't know. There was something else that clicked for me in that moment. It was basically them saying it can't be done. So I think I have the double dog dare gene that says, oh, really? Oh, great. Underestimate me. I'll show you.
Yeah.
Like it
Yep.
fired up a little something rambunctious
Yeah.
inside of me. And I will tell you, that moment was a turning point for me in my life. It
Yeah.
was a moment that created extreme autonomy and sovereignty that I don't believe I'd ever witnessed or experienced before within myself.
Hmm.
So being told no, that nothing could be done, that it was impossible, actually emboldened something in me. And then one
Hmm.
thing, I think I will share this with your group, because there was another accidental thing that happened a few weeks after that moment, which was actually on my 20th birthday, which was I'm going to be dead by the end of the year. So I want to experience as much out of life as possible. So I had an opportunity to do mushrooms. This is 1991,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I didn't know what a mushroom was. I was a girl from Kansas who'd never even smoked a joint, much like, it was like,
Hmm.
it was just not
Yeah.
my world. And so I was with some people that I knew. One of them is now my husband all these years later, who's like, yeah, you just eat them. So I don't know. They don't tell me amount, nothing. They all turn to talk,
Yeah.
and I end up
Yeah.
ingesting an entire. Now, remember, I'm not swallowing things yet. I'm very sick, but I fill a baggie this big full of mushrooms into my mouth and start chewing on them and macerating them and basically sucking on the juices of it because I couldn't swallow them down. About that time, they turned around and realized I got like a pouch. And the look on all of their faces, I realized I'd done something really, really wrong.
A lot of mushrooms.
So yeah, it was. We kind of guesstimate today. I probably ingested around 10 grams, which a heroic dose is typically anything over 3 grams. And
Yeah.
so we're somebody who's never even done anything. I, of course, am like, well, nothing's happening, is what I'm telling. I'm like, I'm fine. What's going on? And then about an hour later, the world
It's just,
changed as I know it today. So that was another moment. And what we now know in the research, again, so let's fast forward. In 2011, I had almost a dozen patients go through a clinical trial at Harvard with the well-known, now late clinician who was doing clinical trials on psilocybin for end-of-life care.
hmm.
And all patients had to be hospice eligible, meaning less than 6 months to live, and they needed to be patients that were no longer taking standard of care treatments. I will tell you, out of those patients, only one of them is dead. And that's where, of course, I wasn't telling them about my history because I was still pretty hush hush. It wasn't until Michael Pollan wrote the book, How to Change Your Mind, and his podcast and stuff came out that people started really talking about psychedelics in the medical space more.
Hmm.
And mine was more in an FU to the world that I took them in, but
Hmm.
they did something inside of me that said, no, You want to be in this world. You deserve to be
Wow.
in this world. There's a
Mhm.
space for you in this world, and you have control over what kind of world you want to create. And that
Mhm.
was a story inside of me that never existed before. It was never offered to me, was never suggested that that was a possibility. And these little, you know, fungi helped me understand myself and the web of the world in which I live in a very different way. So between the fasting, the family fasting,
Yeah.
the mushroom experience, these are the things that really changed the way I think. So when you talked about what was the mindset, what happened for me in that moment where you talk about, you're right, people do go into fear. I had no fear. I had no fear at the diagnosis because I tried to take my own life. So
Mhm.
dying was not something I was afraid of. So
Mhm.
that was a different story for me. And then the mushrooms completely took away that fear. Completely. And it was not an easy journey and still isn't an easy journey all these years later. It's not a linear process, but I
Mhm.
don't have fear around that. And I will tell you, Courtney, I'm glad you brought this up. Fear can be one of the most difficult components to overcome in the cancering or chronic illness process because
Mhm.
when we're in a state of fear, we are not in a parasympathetic nervous system state, which means we are unable to
Mhm.
receive. We're unable to receive love. We're unable to receive healing. We're unable to receive nourishment. We're unable to receive metabolism. We are unable to process anything. And so fear keeps you in that revved fight or flight or freeze or fawn state that prevents you from healing. And so I don't care
Yeah.
how good the treatment is. If you're in that state, it is going to be much more difficult to change those outcomes when fear is in the driver's seat. And so I feel like I was very blessed with the darkness of my life that actually gave me light in the biggest imaginable way to take away that fear.
Wow. That's so good. I just wanna, like, replay that. That was so good. Oh, that was so good. So, I wanna dive into nervous system now and healing. That is, like, so good. I talk a lot about nervous system regulation. I feel like it's everybody's talking about it, of course, but
What?
really, like, we are missing something with the nervous system for so
Yeah.
long. I'm very big on the muscular system. We need to get strong. You gotta have good mobility, you gotta have strong joints, you gotta have all these things, but you can't heal in the environment that's keeping you sick.
Mm. Said
So,
it perfectly.
how so when you started your obviously your own healing journey and then you went into naturopathic medicine
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
your degrees and all of that, like what are you looking at now in women or helping women understand or maybe even clinicians understand that these things are the outliers that can actually heal the body way more than a pill or radiation or chemotherapies that literally kill people?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, again, remember, I was pre med. Science was my Bible, if you will. It was very much like I
Yeah.
loved, I still love the sciences,
Mhm.
right? I'm
Yeah.
still very into that. Always have been, never, and I'm married to a crazy mad scientist, biochemist. So that, those our worlds have always been in this realm. But when I was sitting in my courses after that, so I actually had to take off the rest of that semester and then come back in the winter semester, and I was well enough to actually sit through a class. I was not in a good place. And so I took a pause. But when I came back, it was like stepping in a different universe. My
Mhm.
body, my life, my experiences changed so much in such a short period of time that it was like I didn't recognize myself or the environment which I was in. And it felt so, I was pre-med in a biochemistry, biology degree, and I came back and it was like my nervous system couldn't deal with it. So I went back to the drawing board and I reconstructed my major to a psychology major with a
Mm.
biology minor. And in 1992, when I did that, in the early part of 1992 of reconstructing, this was when I started to run into the work of Robert Ader, who's considered the father of psychoneuroimmunology. I ran across the work of Candace Pert, who wrote an amazing book called The Molecules of Emotion, a very heady molecular and physics, expert who speaks about the physiology of emotion and how it's impact our body. I ran into the work of another man, a molecular biologist who would not even have his first book out until 2011. So almost 20 years it would take before anybody else knew this man who's now a household name, which was this amazing researcher by the name of Bruce Lipton. Running into the work of a woman by the name of Dr. Mina Bissell, who was a researcher who showed that cancer was not truly a genetic disease. It was a disease arising from this extracellular matrix. So something else happening in the tissues, in the cells, in the cytoplasm that was allowing for cancer to express or stay dormant. And I was running into these stories of health and healing that was not being taught to me in my coursework. And so when I left the biochemistry world head on, I still had to take chemistry courses, but I wasn't majoring in it and focused in biology. It was like I would go through almost the motions of biology and appreciate it, but I was really grooving out more of what I was learning in my psychology courses. And those coming together for me were things that I started to build on and continue to today, to realize, especially like in the book Quantum Healing from Deepak Chopra and others, it was just like, wow, if I don't also tend to my emotional health, I am never going to get my physical health back on track. And that, luckily for me, I heard that message loud and clear in the very first months of this process. Whereas so many patients I would see later when I got through medical school and my residencies and whatnot would come to me as a last ditch effort. Now they're so at the end of the line. They're so overtreated with so many different things that the idea of addressing that is just exhausting. When my book came out in 2017, The Metabolic Approach to Cancer, I talk about these sort of 10 main drivers. We might talk about that in a moment. But the 10th drop in the bucket I made as the mental emotional, because I figured at the time in 2017, when this book came out, the world was still not ready for me to have that conversation up front. People were very interested in talking about diet, talking about supplements, talking about lifestyle, but they weren't comfortable yet talking about this mental emotional piece. The thing I would do differently today is I would actually start the book with that piece first. I think we're in a very different place, Courtney, and you talked about everyone's talking about the nervous system. We are, but it's new. This is a relatively new discussions. Talking about the mental emotional field is new. Even though I started these conversations 34 years ago, it was not appropriate. It was not accepted. People weren't curious. In fact, people were quite defensive. If I started there with a patient, I would get one of two things, and I still get this. One of them is, that's not true. There's nothing emotional here. It's very physical. So they just get mad. Or they flip to you're blaming me for my disease process.
Or it's in my head.
Yeah. And so I get that a lot. I'm like, wow, no, I'm trying to make you aware and empowered. We don't know what we don't know until we know. There is no blame. But once you do become aware of something and you still choose the same behaviors or patterns or diet or lifestyle choices that got you in trouble to begin with, well, frankly, then it is your fault. And I don't mean that in a rude way. It's like you just reach a point where you have to take responsibility at some point in what you know, what you learn and what you do with that information. And so that's been my life's journey, is learning these things, applying to myself, learning something else, applying it again, and then not only to myself, but to those that I've had the honor of serving. So it's been a wild ride, Courtney, to put it mildly.
I want to know more about your book. What are these 10 things?
Yeah. So gosh, after all these decades, back in 2017, I started running patient cancer retreats for patients, for women specifically. So we have that in common, a very deep passion for women. In 2009, my husband was the chef, the science chef, who would get up there and explain what the biochemistry of the meal we were eating and what it was happening at the cellular level, and then the alchemy of cooking and using spices.
That's so cool. I love that.
Really,
I'm such a nerd.
Yes, totally. You would love it. This is what happens at our dinner parties too. So, and then
tell me what the meat is doing at a
exactly
cellular
what is happening here, and we would do that. And still do that. And then my nutritionist who came in, who became my co-author for this book, Jess Higgins Kelly, she would also come in. She's like a recipe wizard. Like, she just is like an alchemist in the kitchen. And a passion for food and regenerative farming. Those stories of the food as the foundation are woven through. But what I was realizing over my career is there's sort of 10 main drivers that we need to sort of lift the rock and look underneath for each patient. We need to look under all 10 of them. So the main drivers are your epigenetics, which are your single nucleotide polymorphisms, which are basically your family patterns that can be passed down through generations, but they're just that, they're patterns and they can be easily overcome, right? So just because your mom had cancer, your grandma had cancer, your great grandma had cancer does not mean you have to have cancer.
Mhm.
Or dad had diabetes, grandpa had diabetes, great grandpa had diabetes, doesn't mean you have to have diabetes. You just have to play your cards differently than they did because now
Mhm.
you know. So single nucleotide polymorphisms, these little hiccups that we have inside of us, are things that we can overcome with diet and lifestyle choices. In fact, standard of care even says that cancer is not a genetic disease, despite us still treating it as such. And yet it's under our control 90 to 95% of the time. So
Mm.
that is a very empowering thought. The second drop in the bucket is our metabolism, and specifically what nutrients are we feeding our cells? What information are we giving to our cells? And what are they doing with that information? So when we know that 93% of Americans, and likely anybody in developed countries, are now metabolically broken, meaning that their insulin signaling pathways are really going like really out of whack, to put it mildly. um, that is something that it puts us at risk for all the chronic illnesses of today, not just
Mhm.
cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes,
Yep,
obesity,
everything.
everything, neurodegenerative, like all the things. So that's a big drop in the bucket, so we can easily assess people's diet and their food choices and how it's impacting their metrics, how it's
Mhm.
impacting their tests. Then the third drop in the bucket is environmental issues, environmental toxicity. It's no longer a matter of if you have environmental toxins, it's how bad is it? What kind of toxins are predominant in you, and how do they interface with your epigenetics? Because some of us, like my husband, loves the smell of diesel. I get an immediate migraine. Like, we have different genetics. I'm missing some glutathione pathway processing. He has robust glutathione pathway processing. His body knows how to take out the garbage. Mine does not. So that's our genetic variation. Fourth is the microbiome. Now,
Mm.
this was also ignored for many, 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 many generations, but now it's kind of all the rage. But our microbiome, we're learning, is that's where we process our food. That's where we process our nutrients like vitamin K, and the B vitamins are processed there. That's where we interface with our gut microbiome and our gut leakiness, like our gut barriers, all of
Mhm.
these things. So the microbiome is a really key. It's also where we have the majority of our neuroendocrine system is
Yeah.
housed there. So our neurotransmitters, our immune system is massively there. So that fifth drop is the immune system, and so many pieces there. We have entire chapters on each of these sections in my book, by the way.
So good.
It is, and then
I need to dive in.
there you go. Well, it's great because I think it's a good one. It gives you a lot of information in a consolidated piece. And then just number 7, 8, 9, or 6, 7, 8, 9 is inflammation, then oxygenation and circulation,
Mhm.
um, then hormone balance modulation, because we're all swimming in a giant endocrine disrupting swimming pool on the planet today, and it
Oh,
really
yeah.
wreaks havoc in our hormonal signaling pathways. And then our circadian rhythms, stress biology, and then the final, as I mentioned, the mental emotional. And so those 10 drops, I explore those in great detail with each and every client. And I teach the clinicians and the allied health professionals and the patient advocates how to evaluate this as well. The book is sort of the patient forward guide, although it's written pretty robustly that most clinicians get excited about it and choose to join my
Totally.
courses to learn more. But the front of the
Yeah.
book has a very mini questionnaire asking about those 10 patterns, and it gives you, the reader, an opportunity to go, okay, I scored really high here and here. So instead of just reading the book from front to back, maybe you go and read the two chapters that were most prevalent for you. Maybe it's hormones
Yeah.
and blood sugar. And maybe you go dive deep into those, and that's where you start. Because no matter where you start to impact the whole web, the whole ecosystem. Because sugar doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's going to be impacted by cortisol. It's going to be impacting your hormones. It's going to impact your immune system. It's going to impact your genetic switches. It's going to impact your inflammatory processes. And so suddenly you realize they all interface with each other as well. So if you start with one, you're inevitably supporting and impacting the others.
That's so good.
Yeah.
The fact that you are bringing up all parts of a person's life and their lifestyle and the environment they live in, the toxic relationships they have, their diet, their lifestyle, their exercise. Like, no one's looking at those things.
And it's difficult in our medical model, you can imagine, because our medical model, especially in oncology, is very specific to saying we're looking for a single target, whether it's a single gene, a single molecular pathway, a single oncogene, a single signaling agent, and then we're looking for a single treatment for that target, right?
Mm.
And you can imagine when we keep trying to treat a disease that even the American Cancer Society says is a collection of hundreds of diseases, why would we treat hundreds of diseases with one single agent or two or three agents? Why would we continue to treat these things as genetic disorders when we have proven literally decades ago that it is anything but? And that we literally have literature that shows that 90 to 95% of cancers can be prevented by
Mhm.
just what we just talked about on these 10 drops in the bucket. And that if you start to pull on the levers of all of these different things, it could be impacting, and get curious as to everything you're putting in, on, and around you, and how that may be either leading you down the path towards health or leading you down the path towards harm. That's where the personal empowerment comes in. That's where the personal responsibility comes in. That
Mhm.
this is an opportunity. I want people to pull their head out of the sand.
Yeah.
Because Courtney, what people say to me every single time, and it still blows my mind, and I've been on probably 400 podcasts. I have my own
Mhm.
podcast now. I've got 2 books. I've got 2 more books coming out this year. I've written in multiple textbooks. I've written chapters in other books. I've blogged at like a wazoo. I'm a
Yeah.
prolific communicator on this topic globally. I spoke at 36 conferences this year.
Amazing.
Like, I've now 1,300 clinicians in 46 countries trained. We're out there. How are we still not aware of this information? Well, we have big industries against us, but we have to become curious consumers, because frankly,
Mhm.
no one is going to do it for you.
Yep.
And when we still have systems that are suppressing this information, even targeting this information, deplatforming this information, and it's nothing provocative. Like, every single thing I've said to you today, you could literally take a soundbite and put it in PubMed
Mhm.
and read the literature and the research of everything I just said.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, why are we doing such a disservice to so many? So today alone in the United States, 1,700 people are going to die of cancer. Just today,
Wow.
just
There's
on
a
your
large.
podcast, your 4 podcasts today, 1,700 people have died of cancer. Globally, 26,000.
Oh my God.
So why are we not doing more? Right? In the Since 1971, when we first claimed the war on cancer in the Nixon era and started the National Cancer Institute, we have basically had flatline outcomes ever since. We are not changing statistics. In fact, we are growing faster than ever. The World Health Organization says our cancer rates will double by 2040.
Mm.
Today, 1 in 2 of us on the planet will experience cancer in their lifetime. So it's a flip of a coin.
I believe that.
We have a 46% increase of cancer rates in people under the age of 40 in the last few years. People aren't asking, they keep trying to say it's more genetics. I'm like, really? That we're still
Mm.
using that concept? Even an article in Nature, big peer-reviewed journal in 2024, even says that the somatic mutation, or the genetic theory of cancer, is dead. And yet all of our research dollars, all of our funding, all of our focus, even our imaging and our treatments, are all focused on the wrong problem. And so,
Sick care.
yeah, it is. And we're not changing things. So we collectively have to be asking different questions, and we can't expect that our doctors will do it for us. So I'm hoping your listeners will, and this isn't to sell a book. I don't, by the way, you don't make anything from a book. I'm just going to you're going to make a living off a book. Like, we're not Stephen King, for crying out loud. But it's like, but what it does is it's an education tool. That's for me. Like, I wrote this book because I really thought my mom and a few patients would read it. My mom still hasn't read it, but now 150,000 copies sold, 9 languages, ongoing, still in the top 10 of cancer books on Amazon. Every time I do a
So amazing.
podcast or something, it still shoots to the top. It still is relevant today in 2025 as it was in 2017. The only difference is there's a lot more data backing what we talked about in 2017. And so
Mm-hmm.
it breaks my heart that every single day, today alone, I've had 2 people text me saying, my best friend or my mom was just diagnosed with cancer. It is exploding.
Mm-hmm.
No one's doing anything about it. They're rushing off to jump into the crazy wheel, this like assembly line without asking questions first to say, hold the horse. Let's do a little more testing. Let's ask more questions first to see exactly what path I should take. Because chemo may be the right path, but you need to know what chemo and what dose and in what combination and what duration is going to be best for that person. That's the type of information I train clinicians.
Yeah.
And then for the patients listening to this, every single patient from my career, even today, say, but I was healthy until I got cancer. I said the same thing back in 1991 because I was student body president. I was captain of my volleyball team. I got straight A's. I was like
Yeah.
got scholarships for volleyball in college, like
Yeah.
all the things I was out there performing in the world. So that meant to the outside world that I was fine.
Mm-hmm.
No one in the outside world knew I tried to take my life on 2 occasions.
Mm-mm.
No one in the outside world knew what was happening in my household, what was
Mm-hmm.
happening in my body, in my psyche. Nobody knew that. And so we are out there in the world and we make up so many stories to normalize our experiences that when we are met with something really big, we're shocked. We're in shock. Like, I don't understand. But there's no way you can be healthy and then get cancer. You can, however, have cancer and also become healthy.
Mm.
Those two can coexist, but one has to start, like you have to work hard to create the health once a cancer diagnosis is on board because you had no health when a cancer
Came on
came
board.
on board. Yeah.
That's so good. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah.
So, what does somebody do immediately when that happens as a patient and you're met with, I'm healthy, but then this
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah.
And then you don't know what questions to ask. And maybe you're so fearful of, because I'm sure there is like
Moment.
a
Yeah.
moment, right?
Yeah,
And like,
for sure.
I would say I would get diagnosed, like, God forbid, but like, I would be like, oh, I need to see an oncology doctor. Like right away, my brain would go that route. I need to see a specialist.
Yeah.
And now,
Yeah.
but me being who I am, I'm like, but there's got to be a functional medicine way. Like, do I go functional medicine?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, let me just say this. The first thing you do when you get this diagnosis or you're suspicious of this diagnosis while you're waiting to get the news, your first step is stop and breathe,
Mm,
right? Your first instinct is to jump onto Dr. Google or
yeah.
to start talking to everybody around you. And my recommendation is to avoid that at least at first, because there's a lot swirling around. And when you are dysregulated, you make really bad decisions
Mm,
and you act out of a reactivity versus a responsiveness. And so my recommendation is to get quiet and go inward first and understand what am I experiencing right now? What could this be about for me? What research do I need to know and who do I need to bring on my team before I start doing anything? Is there something else I should be doing before I let them give me a biopsy? Is there something else I should be doing before I let them start treatment? Is there something else or another opinion? So number one is take a moment, pause, look inward. Number two, get a second opinion,
mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm,
This is not to say standard of care is bad, but standard of care is often not enough.
mm-hmm,
Number three is to put together your team. Your oncologists are tumor experts. They are not people experts. They are not you experts, and they are for sure not terrain experts. So, what
mm,
I tell everybody is I do not treat cancer. I never have. I never did in myself or in the patients that I've served. I treat people that happen to have cancer. And I want to understand why the cancer took root because guess what, Courtney? All of us, you, me, all of our listeners, all your listeners, we all have cancer all
mm-hmm.
the time. But our bodies are amazing. They keep it in check. They are constantly scouring the environment and they're recognizing and responding and remembering and they're keeping things at bay. But if you get overwhelmed, if you get toxins in there, or you get stressors in there, or you get wrongful diet or lifestyle in there, or you get, microbiome dysfunction in there, your body can't do the job of surveillance and of maintenance any longer. And so then the things get out of hand. So my recommendation is that you bring on a team. Now, somebody like this, at least now, which is what I'm working hard, and this future part of my career, this is out of pocket care, guys. Standard of care. You said it perfectly, Courtney. It is not healthcare. It is disease management care. If you want to get healthy with cancer, you will not get healthy with a chemotherapist, with a radio oncologist, with a surgeon. They will not make you healthy. And if you believe that, I'm sorry, but you're delusional. And I don't mean to be rude, but how can you poison the body back into health? You have to bring on somebody who understands health creation. You have to.
Wow.
And if you don't want to do that, I'm sad for you. Because yes, it's easy to push back cancer, but it's not easy to keep it at bay. So that's why 70% of patients who've had a diagnosis and have gone through standard of care will have it again. And oftentimes it's too aggressive and too big and too fast and too furious to then get ahead of, even with a health creation team. So my hope is that, number one, prevention is the only cure. So start to evaluate your terrain now.
Let's get into that.
Right,
prevention.
That's
like, what are top 2 to 3 things that people can start doing right now? And I mean, I think you've hit a lot of them already, but how do we just be like, nope, not happening in my body?
I love it. First of all, I want you to be that. I want you to be the outlier. I want you to be the weirdo. For my whole life, everyone's like, you're so weird
now because of it.
Right? Like everyone's like, you're so, but now they're all calling me like, now what do I do? Because I learned a few things along the way.
You were the weird one. Now you're the pro.
It's a weird dance to be in, but there it is. So like I tell people, I joke, I had some people over for dinner the other night and I said, if I'm at your house, I'm telling you right now, I'm looking in your medicine cabinet. I'm looking in your fridge and your freezer and your pantry. I'm looking in your garage. I'm looking under your kitchen sinks, your bathroom sinks. I know the second I walk in your house, what your cancer risks are, basically. If you live on an HOA, you have a cancer risk. Because that means that there are chemicals sprayed all over your HOA properties to prevent weeds, to prevent insects. There's your one big old toxin, right? If you live on or near a golf course, a campus of any kind, a park, you are glyphosate drenched. That is a known carcinogen. You're going to have to invest in a whole house filter and leave your shoes outside. Turn them over if you're in Arizona to avoid the scorpions. If I walk in your house and I smell fragrance, unless you have gone out of your way to find beeswax candles with with natural, aromatherapy oils, you are poisoning yourself. Even IARC, a third-party cancer research agency, has classified fragrance as a known carcinogen.
Yeah. I'll take my dog smelling house. Thank you.
Thank you. If you have dryer sheets or Febreze, if you have new furnishings that are loaded with fire retardant chemicals, if you just recarpeted your whole house, you are just increasing your toxicity load exponentially. That new build you moved into, or that fancy new car you love the smell of, is a giant carcinogen tank that you're living in. I don't mean to freak people out, but it is way better to buy an off-gas 3-year-old car or a used home, or a home that's had all the carpets pulled out down to the natural elements. That is what it takes today. All these new things we've introduced to our world since World War II did not exist a few generations ago. So you have to become aware. So you talked about that. First of all, start auditing yourself. My book really goes through checklists on that. Like, okay, start to slowly change all the plastic out of your house, because guess what? On the planet today, we're each ingesting a credit card a week on average. That's how much plastic we're taking in our food supply today. Things like that. Or body care products. Women walk out the door with no less than 60 chemicals on their skin or in their hair or in their, body care products, walking out the door every single day. Some studies show as much as 120 chemicals. Cord blood, baby's cord blood today shows an average of 200 chemicals in the cord blood. So our babies are literally gestating in a giant toxic cesspool. We don't have any place on the planet where we can hide from that. So what we have to do is we have to limit, minimize, decrease our exposures knowingly. And the only way we change this is not just to think your government's going to do it for you. It's consumer driven. So when you start to shop at your farmer's market and you are shopping for the foods that you know do not have chemical input, that are planted and harvested with love, that are intentional, you are doing yourself and the planet a world of good. When you maybe move away from that high-end golf resort home, get yourself back into some non-chemicalized nature, you're going to do a lot of good for yourself. I mean, I have patients with prostate cancer is a really big one. I have a lot of men with prostate cancer who live on golf courses, and I'm like, you guys are going to have to move. You just are going to have to move. I'm sorry. You're going to take up another sport. You cannot, because I test them. I test and I can show them very clearly. You cannot just air filter your house and take a few supplements. You are literally getting a day-to-day chronic carcinogenic exposure in those places. And so the things that we value in our culture today are things that are killing us. And so switching out your plastics and switching out your Teflon pans and switching out your body care products and switching out your house cleaning products and your laundering products, every single step you make, maybe you can't afford to do it all at once, but you can go to the thrift store and find all glass containers. Don't wash the plastic lids, just hand wash them and let them air dry. Don't heat them. Don't cook and heat food in plastic. Throw out your Keurig coffee makers. People just go crazy. Like, I live here in Mexico. My only body care products are coconut oil, basically, which I live in the tropics. So that's what I have access to here. But maybe up where you are, it might be olive oil or, almond oil or something else. But it's like, these are the things that we didn't even have to have a conversation about just a few generations ago. And so,
which is crazy because you have conversations with people of older generations and they're like, you're crazy. You're crunchy. I'm like, it's not the same anymore.
It isn't. And
we've come so far.
You got it. And Courtney, here's a hard statistic that people don't like to hear. And I get a lot of hate mail on this, but I'm just the messenger, so don't shoot me. The World Health Organization said that children born, so people born after 1980, are not expected to have the same life expectancy as their parents. This is the first time in human history that this has happened. The first time. Exactly. So if you were born pre-World War II, you have more longevity than those born after 1980. So when people are like, well, I'm 90 and I smoke like my mom was just here. She will be 80 this year. Yeah. She smokes like a freaking chimney, right? And she will probably outlive all of us because she had a little bit of a runway, born in 1947. She still had a few years before all those things became just endemic. 1947 was the tail end of World War II. It would still be another 20 years before, she didn't have her first fast food until the late 1950s. Didn't even exist.
Yep.
There were no birth control pills until the 1960s. There were no plastics until the 1960s. There was no glyphosate until the end of 1960s, but that didn't become part of our food supply until the latter part of the 1980s. So it's like you start to think about this, that's not that long ago, right? And so when people say, oh, you're crazy or you're orthorexic, meaning you're questioning your food supply or whatnot, that's denial. And it's a dangerous place to be when you know it's a coin flip today. So if you know you have a 50-50 chance, a head or a tails, of having a cancer diagnosis in your lifetime, what would you do differently in your life? What might you start to ask questions about? We have to become advocates for ourselves and our loved ones, but we also have to become activists because we are the only ones who can change policy. We are the only ones to demand better from our healthcare providers, our educators, our farmers, our pharma. We have to do better, right? Because they will follow the almighty dollar. That's why you're now seeing this huge movement of I can't remember which one of the big fast food chains is going to take on regenerative beef for their hamburgers. That wasn't because they had a change of heart overnight. That's because people demanded it.
Yeah.
Like the
Yep.
move of moving seed oils, for instance, out, like seed oil, specifically like canola and
Yeah,
soybean oil out of those types of fryers. And we're like, those might seem like not big deals, but they're huge deals because that means
they are.
industry is listening to us, the consumer.
That's
We are
so
powerful.
good. Oh, yes. Like we are the people. We're not going to buy your products. We're not going to go to your restaurants. We're not going to do those things. Like my partner and I, like we have, him and I are just directly the same people, which is so nice because like when we go out to eat, like we go to farm to table, like very specific,
Yeah.
high end, nice
Yeah.
places. Like I literally can't tell you the last time I went through a drive through.
Yeah.
Like I won't do it. I won't do it. I am so sensitive to seed oils. I feel like I'm crazy at times, but like I will get sick if I have a burger that is fried in canola oil. Like I will get nauseous. I will get a stomach pain. I will get diarrhea. Like when you clean the system out and then you put grease back into the
Mhm.
system, like it's going to slow the motor down.
Oh, you nailed it. That's exactly, and
Like
that's what it's doing. It's slowing down the mitochondrial motor, which
everything.
is your longevity,
Yeah.
right? That is your ATP. That is your energy production. That is your energy exchange. And when you clog that up with all the things you're being exposed to day to day, you age faster. So when people
Okay,
say,
riddle
why
me
are we
this.
getting cancer at younger? We're being born genetically, or I should say mitochondrially older than
Yes.
ever before. Our poor mitochondria, which are the hallmark of longevity, are being hit at such, like, even in the gestation, even pre. So remember, your grandmother, Courtney, held your mom, and your mom in her ovaries held you. You are three generations in one woman,
Mm, that's
right?
crazy.
And so in that, you were exposed to all the things your grandmother was exposed to and that your mother was exposed to. And now your future was being exposed to your mother and you. So
Mm,
thinking about it that way, you start to go, whoa, this is why we are aging. Even the eggs within our mothers, within our grandmothers, are now
mhm,
older coming out of the womb.
mm,
And so, of course, we are more sensitive to and having diagnoses earlier because cancer used to be considered a disease of the aged.
mhm.
It used to be when I left medical school, the average age of cancer was 68 years old. Today it's 48 years old, and that number is dropping exponentially.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So we have to come together. I don't tell people this to scare them. I tell you to wake you up because we have to do
Yes.
better. We have
Yes.
to demand better. And we can and we will and we are. And there are beautiful pockets popping up all the way around doing this. And it's people like you, Courtney, out there using your platform, bringing these people in to share these stories that people can go and just, like, maybe next time you reach for that product, you'll be like, hmm, let me think about this for a second. I want you just to be conscious.
Yes. That's all
And
it
then
is.
it is. And then start thinking about it differently and asking different questions and reading labels and really weighing out, is this what I need? Is this going to
Mhm.
bring me closer to health or closer to harm? Yeah.
Right. Just making informed decisions. What I think is kind of crazy is that I feel like the healthier, because I know people in my life that are not healthy,
Yeah.
like not. And they don't live a healthy lifestyle, but they are healthy. But the
Bit of,
healthy people over here that are crunchy
yeah.
are struggling with
Yeah.
sickness at
Yep.
times.
Yep.
Can you
Absolutely.
explain that?
Well, I mean, part of it. So, first of all, I should probably say, by the way, this is not Kool-Aid. This is my unsweetened hibiscus tea. I should probably, I thought I could just see your folks coming out later going, what was she
She's
drinking?
drinking
I'm drinking my
fresh
Kool-Aid. I'm drinking
Kool-Aid.
my red dye number 8.
I love it.
But so that was like an example. My mom was here with us for Thanksgiving. Love this woman, but oh my gosh, she does not take care of herself. And it's brutal. It's brutal to watch because I'm like you. One of the hardest things I experienced, so I've got celiac, so I can't do gluten. And I'm also allergic to corn, which took me a while to figure out after I left the
Mm,
gluten world. I was like, oh
yeah.
crap, I jumped from a frying pan to another. And then I started learning as I got cleaner and cleaner. The seed oil conundrum is really, I'm really sensitive to that because also one of my diagnoses I forgot to tell you about was arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis,
Mhm.
which that's what flares for me if I get a seed oil exposure. So these are the places that as you get cleaner, your body then is actually responding appropriately to its environment. So I tell folks, if patients tell me they are never sick, that's as big of a danger zone than always being sick. Okay. The always being sick says your immune system's in hypervigilance, overacting all the time. That's one end of the spectrum, not appropriate. The other end of the spectrum is never sick or never symptomatic or, hey, I can eat anything I want and nothing happens. That's actually a big red flag
Mm.
because that means your immune system is off. It's off. It's like turned off. So when you get cancer, it's going to be like game on. It's going to be Everworks. It's going to have to be big enough and loud enough to capture your attention instead of being a little smoldering ember in the basement. It's going to be an entire house engulfed in flames by the time you're aware of it. But for us canary in the coal mine types, we are hypersensitive, which is also like I'm working constantly and trying to moderate that as well, because that still says like that is a nervous system problem, by the
Yep.
way. That's a chronic stress response pattern when you're always sick. And then the other end being never sick is a immune system off track problem. So you want to be in that place. We all should get a good cold or flu a couple times a year, period.
Yep.
That's normal and healthy. That's the upgrade and the clean out system. Mucus
Mm.
production is the expelling of getting rid of garbage, right? It's
Mm.
perfect. When you fever, you are killing all kinds
Yeah.
of good stuff. When you have a good diarrhea, you're cleaning house, or a good puke, you're cleaning house. Like that is your body doing what it was designed to do, which is purge what is not serving you. But when we
Mm.
just sort of simmer and fester in it, that's a problem. And by the time it is big enough and loud enough, it's much more difficult to address. And so those who are always sick in some ways are easier to treat than those that are never sick, because at least we have clues, lots of little breadcrumbs to follow.
Mm.
Whereas somebody who's never sick, you don't know until it's huge for that
Yeah.
population.
Wow, that's so good. That's so perfectly explained. I have always wondered that. Like in my friends who are, in the crunchy era too, we talk about this. We're like, why are we like so sensitive to
Yeah.
things? Why do we struggle with the bloating or like the indigestion, or if we eat dairy, like why do we struggle with these things? Like and my family's like, you're so healthy. Like, why do you
It
struggle
almost
with
like
these
in a bad
things?
way, right? You're like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And I'm
yeah.
like, you should take a note. Like
Yeah,
learn something, right?
exactly,
But
exactly.
yeah. Well, this has been such an amazing conversation.
Yeah.
I just want to ask a couple more questions. What belief about cancer do you wish everyone on the planet would retire completely?
That gives me chills. Gosh. I mean, first of all, I want you to know that you are far more powerful than you've been led to believe. Okay, that you have a bigger role to play in the prevention of, the treatment of, and the cleanup after of this process than anyone has told you. So I want them to understand that. I also want people to understand that cancer is not something that happened to you, it's something that happened for you. And that cancer is actually a messenger and an opportunity, and that you have an opportunity to actually be healthier than you ever possibly imagined. And I see that all the time. People, the emails, the countless letters, emails, texts, messages I get, people bawling, coming up to me in public places and telling me, I can't believe it, but when you said that, I wanted to hate you and kick you. But you're right. I'm healthier now than I ever was before. And so I'm hoping that that's something that is more of a message of hope that comes through versus one of
Yes.
hopelessness. Yeah.
As someone from the other side where I haven't been met with a cancer diagnosis, and quite frankly, it doesn't run in my family. I don't really know a lot of people close to me that have
Good.
it. Like
Wow.
maybe
You're rare. Good
a
job.
distant great aunt, like way different generation. And I haven't felt that personal, like, oh,
Mhm.
my mom or my grandma, like, fortunately, right? So if it were to ever hit me or someone close to me,
Yeah.
it would be like, oh my gosh, like it would be the biggest shock versus it's like the big C word that like nobody wants to say.
Yes. Yeah.
And so hearing that from you gives me, even for myself, like I'm like, if that were to ever come into my life, God forbid, um, I now know I have power to do something, and I'm educated and I'm informed and I can build a team.
Yes.
I do think that's going to land really well for a lot of listeners because maybe they're like me or maybe they are not like me and they have it present in
Mm-hmm.
their area and their families, but I think that it's very hopeful. I think you worded it perfectly and I hope it lands well too.
I do too. Thank you.
I always ask this question on this podcast, and it's what's one rule, piece of advice, or a small blueprint that you were told growing up as a little girl, or
Mm.
even now as an adult woman that you've completely thrown out? You're like, hell no. And what did you replace it with?
I would like to offer that I am still learning that being a nice person is not authentic, and that being nice can get you hurt and beat up pretty bad in the world when you are the person taking the initiative of, I'll bend over backwards to be a people pleaser, which has been part of my journey for my life. I want people to understand that is a very poisonous process. And each time I think I refine it and get better and better with it until I have another opportunity to realize still have work to do there. And so for me, when you talk about the what I'm letting go, it's a work in progress for me to continuously evaluate my authenticity. Am I being nice and accommodating to be a people pleaser, or am I being nice and accommodating because it's just authentic and true of what I should be? So I'm learning that on, and I'm trying and expecting to get better and better at my discernment in that arena, and also getting better about trusting those red flags, trusting my instincts, and responding sooner than always. My mom even says that. She's like, I don't know how you find such joy in the world. And so I'm always seeing the bright side of things. I'm always seeing the best in people. I'm always expecting people to be able to reach their potential. And that is, I don't ever want that part of my being to go away. But I also am learning that I also need to have people earn that trust, that
Mm,
respect, and that right to earn that place in my life. And so I'm hoping that somebody else might listen to this and maybe listen to themselves of where they've maybe given themselves away or
mhm.
been taken advantage of, and maybe carry resentment or betrayal or hurt in those situations, that when you really think back and you really look at it, you really realize, yeah, I did it again. There it
Yep.
is. So
Oh,
work in progress, folks. Work in progress.
yeah. No, that's a mic drop right there. And that's on a healed nervous system. That's what I would call that.
Mm, indeed.
Big
Absolutely.
T, little T, we've worked on all that. That's good. I love
Nice.
that for
Oh,
you.
perfect.
Well, this has been such an amazing conversation, and I want people to follow you and learn from you because you are such a light of information. Where can people find you and follow your work?
Well, definitely keep it easy. Just go to drnasha.com. It has all the things, places I've talked and podcasts, etc. And then my podcast is Metabolic Matters with Dr. Nasha Winters. So you can come and have a listen there. There's so many amazing people in this world. And I love this platform of podcast conversations because, like you said, it's like having a cup of tea with a friend.
Yeah,
It's just such a great time to in a place of just receiving knowledge and sharing in community, and inspiring and bringing hope in a world that sometimes feels a bit hopeless. So yeah, please follow
absolutely.
me there in those worlds. Yeah.
Amazing. Again, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much, Courtney. Appreciate you so much.